Dealings with the Dead, number 24. Burning dead saints is a more pardonable matter than burning living martyrs. The combustion of St. Genevieve's dry bones than the fiery trial of Latimer and Ridley. The fantastical decree of the French Convention than the cruel discipline of Bloody Mary. Dark days were they, and full of evil, those years of bitterness and blood, from 1553 of the Common Era to November 17th, 1558, when by a strange coincidence, this hybrid queen, whose sire was a British tyrant, and whose dam a Spanish bigot, expired on the same day with the Cardinal. Reginald Poe. From the remarkable proximity of the events arose a suspicion of poison, of which the public mind has long since been disabused. In this age of greater intelligence and religious freedom, the outrages perpetrated in the very city of London within 5 brief years are credible only on the strength of well-authenticated history. According to Bishop Burnet, 284 persons were burnt at the stake during the 4 years of this merciless and miserable reign. Lord Burleigh makes the number of those who died in that reign by imprisonment, torments, famine, and fire to be near 400. Well, ages before Christendom didn't have quite the level of persecution on religious base, but that does actually go back quite some time, right? Weaver, in his Funeral Monuments, page 116, quotes the historian Speed as saying, "In the heat of those flames were burnt to ashes 5 bishops, 21 divines, 8 gentlemen, 84 artificers, and 100 husbandmen, servants, laborers, 26 wives, 20 widows, 9 virgins, 2 boys, and 2 infants, one of them whipped to death by Bonner, and the other springing out of the mother's womb from the stake, as she burned, thrown again into the fire. Here in passing suffer me to express my deep reverence for John Weaver. I know of no book so interesting to the craft as his Funeral Monuments, a work of infinite labor and research. Weaver died in 1632 and lies in St. James, Clerkenwell. His epitaph may be found in Strype's Survey. Lancashire gave me birth, and Cambridge education. Middlesex gave me death, and this church my humation. And Christ to me hath given a place with him in heaven." Matthew 7:22-23 might differ, but, it's better to speak of aspiration than to assert, right? When it comes to that stuff. The structure of these lines will remain the classical reader of Virgil's epitaph. Maintenant me Gignet Calabri rapura tenet nun Parthenope Gicine Passua Ria Ducas, or is it Rutta Ducas? The short and sharp reign of Mary Tudor was remarkable for burning Protestant Christians and wax candles. That fountain of fun, pure and undefiled, that Prince of Wage, Theodore Hook, was offered very young for admission at the university. And when the Chancellor opened the book and gravely inquired if he was ready to sign the 39 articles, "Yes, sir," replied the young puppy. 40, if you please." Nowadays, 36 is probably the articles that we should become more acquainted with, right? Now, in contemplation of the enormous consumption of wax, especially upon the occasion of funeral obsequies during Mary's reign, it would seem that a belief in its vital importance might have formed an additional article in the Romish creed. I have never thought well of grafting religion on the selfishness of man's nature. Nominal converts, it is true, are readily made in that way. In Catholic countries, wax chandlers are Romanists to a man. Okay, what it was... Well, I mean, because, they ritually use candles as Catholics, If you've been in a Catholic church, there's a place to light candles, and they charge you per candle. I always considered the attempt a few years since to convert the inhabitants of Nantucket to Pussyism by a practical appeal to their self-interest, however ingeniously contrived, a very wicked thing, and I greatly lauded the good old bishop of this diocese for rebuking those very silly priests who promoted a senseless and extravagant consumption of one of the great staples of that island by burning candles in the daytime. He made good use of his mitre as an extinguisher. And that's the thing, too, is that use them as lighting, but not just, while there's a candle burning, it's daytime or something. That does seem silly. Like I see these videos, these people, I gotta light a candle. It's like, all the lights are on, woman. What are you doing? Or dude, or whatever. On a somewhat similar principle, I've always objected to every attempt to augment the revenues of a state by taxing corpses, not upon the acknowledged principle that taxation without representation is inadmissible, but because the whole system is a most miserable mingling of sacra profanus. I may not be understood by all in this remark. I refer to those acts of Parliament which, for the purpose of levying a tax or promoting some particular branch of industry, have attempted to regulate a man's apparel, and the fitting up of his narrow house after he is dead. The compulsory employment of flannel by British statute is an example of this legislative interference. Now, in some cultures, the patterns and stuff is how you identify them. Nothing is more common in Strype's ecclesiastical memorials than entries such as these. 1557, May 3rd, the Lord Chandois was buried with heralds and hearse of wax, 4 banners of images, and other appendages of funeral honor. On the 5th, the Lady Chamberlain was buried with a fair hearse of wax. May 28th, in the forenoon, was buried Mrs. Gates' widow, late wife, as it seems, to Sir John Gates, executed the first year of this queen's reign. She gave 17 fine black gowns and 14 of broad russet for poor men. There were carried 2 white branches, 10 staff torches, and 4 great tapers. July 10th, the Lady Tresham was buried at Petersborough with 4 banners, and in hearts of wax and torches. 1558, September 14th, buried Sir Andrew Judd Skinner, merchant of Muscovy, and the late mayor of London, with 10 dozen of escutcheons garnished with angels, and an hearse of wax. What is an hearse of wax? This will be quite unintelligible to those who have supposed that word to import nothing else than the vehicle in which the dead are carried to the grave. Hearse also signifies a temporary monument, erected upon or near the place of sepulchre, and on which the corpse was laid for a time in state, and a hearse of wax was a structure of this kind, surrounded with wax tapers. This will be made manifest by some additional extracts from the same author. Sounds like some necromantic thing, doesn't it? 1557, the 16th day of July, died the Lady Anne of Cleves at Chelsea, sometimes wife and queen of King Henry VIII, but never crowned. Her corpse was carried the night following. On the 29th, began the hearse at Westminster for the Lady Anne of Cleves, consisting of carpenters' work of 7 principals, being as goodly in hearts as had been seen. On the 3rd of August, the body of Lady Anne of Cleves was brought from Chelsea, where her house was, unto Westminster, to be buried. Men bore her under a canopy of black velvet with 4 black staves, and so brought her into the hearse, and there carried dirge, remaining there all night with lights burning. On the 16th day of August, the hearse of the King of Denmark was begun to be set up in a 4-square house. August 18th was the King of Denmark's hearse in St. Paul's, finished with wax, the like to which was never seen in England in regard to the fashion of square tapers. And on the 23rd also was the King of Denmark's hearse at St. Paul's, taken down by the wax chandlers and carpenters, to who this work pertained by the order of Mr. Garter and servant of the Lord's treasurer's servants. These hearses were doubtless very attractive in their way. August 31st, 1557, the young Duchess of Norfolk being lately deceased. Her hearse began to be set up on the 28th in St. Clement's without Temple Bar, and was this day finished with banners, pencils, wax, and escutcheons. The office of an undertaker in those days was no sinecure. He was an arbiter elegantarian. A funeral was festive then. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die, was the common phylactery. The funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. Baked meats shall be the subject of my next, and arbiter elegantiarum